Hi. Awesome. Let's jump into CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's pretty much the skin and bones to the skeleton of HTML. It adds a bit of flair, a bit of style. And as you can see on the screen, we have a bit of it here, and it kind of acts in like this equals this and this equals this. And then you can see that it's kind of styled this kind of page here. So the color for the heading is blue and the paragraph is red, and like the fonts are different as well. So it can do a lot of pretty stuff. And so let's look at the syntax a bit more. And so we can see that it's pretty much just a bunch of pairs, like just put together to dictate what the HTML should look like. And so we have like a key or identifier followed by the value that it takes. So we have CSS now to do that. Well, let's try and put CSS in our HTML. And there are a few ways you can do that, and let's kind of explore them. So if I just go here, I can, let's say, force my heading to be blue, let's say. And so at the moment, it is still black. It is still normal generic. And so what we want to do is add a bit of style. So we're kind of adding a bit of an attribute. And so here we can go color is blue. Cool. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. And it's changed it to blue. Awesome. So this is what we call inline CSS. So you've put it in this one line here. So I guess that can get pretty messy pretty quickly if you have more than one kind of style that you want to add. So let's move this out, or let's look at the second way, is to put everything in the I believe we put it in the head section. So that's in here. And so we want to add a bit more style. So we use the style tag. Cool. And we need to denote where or which kind of things adopts this style. So let's say we want to do the heading again, the H1. So let's do H1 for every H1 that exists. And then we put the curly brackets because if we have many things, it'll be grouped together. So the first thing we want to do is add color, which is blue. Nice. And then sometimes we want to add more, but curly brackets just groups them together, as you can see. And so now if I get rid of this inline bit here, and I just have this bit, it should hopefully stay blue. Cool. So it hasn't deleted the blue that we expected, and it still stayed blue. Awesome. And so this is also like, it's not inline, but it's still internal CSS. And yeah, and this is kind of called a selector because we're selecting the H1 to be the color blue. And we can make even more selectors, like let's make this paragraph be a different color. Paragraph, select the paragraph to be, let's say green. Cool. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Refresh. Perfect. And so you can see it's green as well. So we're able to select the things we want with our selectors here. So that's the terminology. And then we can denote it. Let me just close this. Okay. But it can even get even more messier here because everything's all in this one big document of HTML. And so the third thing we can do is do like external CSS. So if we go to create a new file, let's just call it style and now the extension .css. Now we can put all our CSS there. And so let me put this CSS stuff here. But it's not linked yet. So this file is not linked to the HTML yet. But the only thing you need to do is copy this line. So you write link because you want to link this one. And you want to say rel because it's like a style sheet that dictates the style. And then you give the reference thing, which is the file name style.css, and then close. Cool. And so hopefully it should still have those colors, otherwise it wasn't linked correctly. And it still has those colors, which means that it has properly been linked, even though there's no CSS in this file. It's all in here, and it's linked properly. Perfect. And so this is how we just connect CSS with HTML, and super easy. And so here now, there's so many other things we can do besides color, and like HTML, even if you just search up on Google like all the CSS things you can do, it can come up with so many things, and you can customize it even more however you want to. Yeah, and so one thing before we just move on is, this idea of selectors. So this has selected all the H1, this has selected all the paragraphs. And now let's say I want to, let's just comment this out for now first. And so how to comment it out is like a slash and a asterisk and ending by an asterisk and a slash. So what if I want both the H1 and the P to have a certain style? What I do is I would do dot, let's give a common name for it, and let's say text, textile or something. And so let's say they all have to be blue. Cool. So now we have another selector, and this selector in particular, because it starts with a dot, is called a class. And so we can make all these have that class. So the class will be called this. Same for this one, and as long as all the classes have this, then it will all have that style. And so that's how we kind of don't repeat ourselves by copy and pasting it, the color blue everywhere. We just have it for this one class, and hopefully it has turned it all blue. Perfect. So now we have it both as blue. So this is called a class. And let's keep going. But yes, it's CSS is very easy to integrate and continue through. And let's talk a bit more about the idea of selectors, and classes we saw were one of them. It gives multiple parts of the HTML the same style. But an ID is a little bit different. It's also a selector, but it's meant to be a unique one. So you should only give the ID to one element on the what's that called, on the HTML. So if I show you, oh sorry, here, if I show you here, let's say oh, I forgot to say that we see it's denoted with a hashtag. So let's do a hashtag. So let's comment out this text style first. And let's do hashtag blue color. And we do color blue. We should only expect to see the blue color ID at one place. So we can get rid of this class bit. And now we write ID equals like blue color. And hopefully only the heading adopts this. But yeah, so yeah, oh yeah, it's updated. So only the heading has adopted this. But yeah, so conventionally, one ID should correspond to only one place in the code. Cool. Let's keep going. Now, there's another cool thing in CSS called pseudoclasses. And this is a kind of suffix you can add to the end of a class, and it kind of specifies the state of the thing you're changing up or styling up. So it's best explained as an example, but let's look at it with what we call the hover effects, the hover effect, and that's a type of pseudo class. So let's hijack this ID, and let's say so you can do it on any selector. So to add a pseudo class, it's colon, and then there's like just built-in ones, but the most common one is called hover. And so let's say whenever you hover over the text, it becomes blue. So let's give that a go. Cool. There we go. Let's refresh first. So it's all black now. And if I hover, it becomes blue. Cool. So yeah, this is under a pseudo class, and it's really fun, and you can research all the cool existing pseudo classes there are. Let's keep going. So now we get to something called the box model. And so this kind of idea is mainly about how, in like Word, Microsoft Word and Google Docs, you want to space everything. But sometimes if you just move one picture or anything, it erupts. It like gets messy. And so having a nice layout and being able to lay things here perfectly comes with a lot of trial and error. And so I won't talk too much regarding this, but I'll give you like the little tools that you need. And you guys, when you are making any web pages, it just comes with playing around with numbers and things. And so so for example, one way we can look at the kind of an element, and that's denoted by like the content within the element, is by looking at this thing called the box model. And so the content can be surrounded by padding, a bit of a border, and also even a margin as well. And so let's kind of see. So if we had like pictures, right? And if we wanted a bit of padding, then that's really good because then the two pictures, they're not stuck together. They have a bit of padding between each other. But let's look at that with what we have already. So let's continue here. So let's say we want to add a bit of a margin, and you can specify just margin, or you can do like margin, the top margin. And let's say we want to just put 100 pixels. And so this is where a bit of the playing around comes along, because 100 pixels, you can't really visualize it too well how much that is. And so sometimes you adjust 90, 80, depending. I forgot to put a semicolon here, so that's why it's complaining, but now it's good. And let's also do padding to see, is there any difference? And so I'll do the same amount. Cool. Now, what does that look like? Oh, oh, I see. So I did that when it's hovering. But that's okay. You can still kind of tell what's happening. So when I hover, it's shifted down. And so it looks like margin and padding kind of do really similar things. They both add a bit of like space up the top. But sometimes you don't know if it's margin or padding, which one's in the works. So if we go back to what we did before, right click, inspect element or inspect, we can look at what's on the side here. Maybe if we need to zoom in. And if I scroll down, we have a bit of a picture here. So if I hover over this one, we can, oh, this might not be, 1 second. Let me get rid of the hover part of it to give a better example. So now it's gonna be like that consistently. So if we just look at this, that we can see the different colors, and so that corresponds to what we saw here. So we did 100 pixels margin, right? And we did 100 pixels padding. So this helps very visually, and that's what we expected as well. So if you ever get lost between which one was the margin and padding, and that helps really well with how the box model works. Cool. And so let's keep going. I think we're on small last thing. So yeah, another big issue you face with CSS or like the style of a web page is the idea of spacing when the screen is enlarged or made smaller. For example, if you want to be on your laptop versus be on your phone. And so let's kind of see like on the UNSW website, which we have here. So let me close this. And so, what does it look like when we kind of make it smaller, smaller? Okay, it looks a bit more different and different. Oh, this is not great. And we always want to avoid that stuff, right? We want it to be like good at any time. And so there are some issues because when you do make your screen smaller, some issues like that could happen. But there are some ways to kind of account for this. And I think there are two main ways. The first way is something called a media query, where when the screen resizes, it immediately like swaps to a different look. So let me give an example. This is a site that I've seen before, and this is what it looks like now. So we have like colors, the things here. When we go smaller and smaller, it suddenly jumps to this, and then it even suddenly jumps to this. So you can see how even these, some pictures have disappeared and like different sections, and it almost looks like a completely different site. And so that's an example of, I think, people using this thing called media query to account for when we resize the screen, it gives a different look. Another way to do it is using something called a flexbox. And so if I click on this link here, it might tell me a bit more. There we go. So it's the idea that it's a bit like what UNSW was doing. So as we expand it, like the things here squish in a bit and so on, or the text down here moves to the next line, if that makes sense. So it rolls over. And so if you can think of almost like elements, like even pictures lined up next to each other, and you make the screen smaller, it'll roll over. So Flexbox is something that you make a kind of like div or like a section, like the display being a flex. And so you can then organize itself to be in a certain arrangement, and even when it's shrunk or expanded, the arrangement that you entail won't be lost. It'll just dynamically follow as the screen might even grow or so on. And this site is really helpful, I reckon, because it gives you the kind of CSS that you might want to do to implement some of these things. And Flexbox is really good to learn, I believe, like hands-on wise. And so there's a really nice thing called a Flexbox Froggy that lets you do that. And so the main goal is to move this frog onto the lily pads. And so let's see, how do we move this one into here? We want to use some different like ways to different ways of using the Flexbox kind of idea to move them around. So if I went to level 1 and I take this out, so it was originally like this, and this helps you step through like different parts. So justify content and then flex end, because it'll move it to the end, should move it to the right. And so you just click through the levels to keep trying to move the froggies along. And it's a really nice exercise. Awesome. I think that's all for CSS for me now. And we'll go into JavaScript in a second.